Tourism is one of the industries that's been worst hit by the coronavirus pandemic. It's estimated that global travel will fall by 30 to up to 30% this year. Europe accounts for half the world's tourist arrivals and is facing staggering losses. EU ministers are due to hold a virtual summit later today to discuss how they can help an industry in crisis.
From Paris to Brussels. European capitals that should be filled with people lie almost empty and silent. With borders closed and members of the public forced to stay home, Europe's tourism industry is in dire straits. The European market accounts for half of world tourism, according to the EU Commission. It fears the tourism economy within the 27-nation bloc could fall by up to 70%. That could result in the loss of up to 400 billion euros for the industry. Spain is the most popular tourist destination in the EU. It's also the world's second most visited nation. But there are no visitors these days. For bar owners like Pablo Gonzalo, it's a worrying time.
The year 2020 is practically blank. Many businesses will not reopen because they won't be able to continue. Right now, the only thing to do is to look month by month and not think about the distant horizon.
Across the border, the Portuguese government has said it will start reopening hotels in June for those that are still in business. Others are taking things into their own hands. In Berlin, hotel and restaurant owners have taken empty chairs to Brandenburg Gate to illustrate just how tough life has become for them.
Berlin
lives on tourism. If we don't support our hotels and restaurants with this action, who will?
Most European governments are already offering more financial support to tourism and travel sectors. But for some businesses, it may already be too late.
Well, for the very latest, let's cross over to DW correspondent Bernd Riegert in Brussels. Bernd, we heard about Spain in that story. What other countries in Europe are hurting from the collapse of tourism and travel?
Yeah, when you think of tourism in Europe, of course, all southern countries come to mind. Italy, Portugal, Greece, even Cyprus. They make a lot of revenue out of tourism. In the case of Spain, 100 billion euros a year. But also other countries are suffering. For example, Germany makes 260 billion euros out of tourism every year. So all the European countries are affected. Some are more dependent on revenue, like Greece. And so all EU ministers try to come up with a plan how to reopen the borders in Europe so that people can actually travel to other countries. But there are many concepts in the air. Nobody knows exactly the timetable. Austria, for example, wants to open up for its neighbors like Germany, Hungary or Slovenia. Spain also wants to lure in tourists again as early as June. But the German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas is warning, don't make it so quick. He's talking or thinking about September.
Well, EU ministers are meeting today at a distance to discuss solutions. They'll talk about ways of supporting the tourism industry, but there's little they can do to bring the tourists back right away. One destination that's feeling the pinch is Hallstatt in Austria. The residents who once complained about being overrun by visitors there now find themselves dealing with the opposite extreme.
Welcome to Hallstatt, a picture-perfect gem in the Austrian Alps. Before the pandemic, the village drew 1 million tourists a year. One tour bus after the other, day in, day out. And now, everyone's gone. No buses, no tourists, no souvenir photos. For many, Hallstatt was something out of a fairy tale, a bucket list destination that thousands documented on their Instagram accounts.
Top three beautiful town in the world.
But while tourists admired the old houses and filled the streets, many locals felt overwhelmed. The problem is that I almost never spend any time outside anymore. It's simply too loud out here on my terrace. Not anymore. Now Hallstatt is a ghost town, and the locals aren't sure whether they like that either. It's such a charming place, and now we have it all to ourselves again. But even so, we miss the tourists. It's gone from one extreme to the other. Somewhere in the middle would be best. This situation isn't good for us either. It's kind of spooky in the village. I take a deep breath and that calms me down. Somehow it's an unpleasant feeling just now. The residents of Hallstatt are learning how much they miss the tourists and the money they bring with them. Some locals can't wait for the commotion to return to the newly quiet streets of their alpine idol.
So, Bernd, looking ahead, what could tourism in Europe look like once it does come back to life?
The European Union is trying to come up with some guidelines how to reorganize travel that concerns hotels. Should hotels only be booked half? Should they only serve one-course meals with throwaway cutlery or things like that to keep sanitation and to keep a health concept? And there's also the question, how do people actually travel? Will airlines be able to leave the middle seat free? How will airports be organized? All this has to be hammered out, but it's also clear that a common approach is very difficult. Some countries want to do it earlier, some countries want to do it later, and so the motto this year might be stay at home, stay at your own nation. So Germans will vacation in Germany, Austrians will vacation in Austria. This is the most likely scenario, and the EU is warning that the travel industry will only come back to its normal level next year.
Bernd, thank you very much. DW's Bernd Riegert in Brussels. The Spanish government is debating which areas of life can be eased out of lockdown and when. Spain's been severely hit by the pandemic, and Madrid wants hotels, bars and restaurants to stay closed until the end of the year. But local politicians and businesses are up in arms. Many rely on tourism and want to reopen in mid-July. DW's Jan-Philipp Scholz went to the usually busy beach resort of Marbella to see how people are planning for a summer with the coronavirus.
A vacation paradise in standby mode. In mid-March, this pool in Marbella was crowded with holidaymakers. The hotel almost at capacity, says hotel director Fernando Alfarc. Until, from one day to the next, everything shut down. Now he just hopes he can reopen the hotel in time for the high season in July.
Everything is ready. We could open tomorrow if we had to. 2 weeks before, we had to close. We revised all our hygiene procedures, and so far, not a single guest or employee has become infected with the coronavirus.
But so far there is no information on what the health regulations for hotels in Spain will be. A growing number of hotels expect the next high season to be next year. In economic disaster, tourism employs about 2 million people here in Spain, and that doesn't include the many small businesses that depend on tourists. Some beach restaurants in Marbella are offering delivery and takeout meals for locals and retirees who came here for the winter and couldn't or didn't want to return home.
Right now, it's a little bit difficult, but we are increasing the sales. Every day, people know that we do home delivery and takeaway, so they order more and more.
Marbella's business owners hope that at least Spanish tourists hit the beaches this summer. The challenge will be making the beaches safe for everyone. 2 meters distance between each beach towel, that would be about this much space between each vacationer. That's one of the many plans being considered here in Spain at the moment to at least partially save this year's beach season. But many are asking, is this plan feasible, and who would end up enforcing these measures? Some people are calling for a kind of beach police. One businessman from Italy has designed plexiglass boxes that could be set up to reduce contact between sunbathers. We talked to him via video link from his office in northern Italy. He told us he has had inquiries from resorts all over Europe, including Spain.
We want to make this invention even better. For example, we are working on a spray system on the outside walls to disinfect the area.
It's an idea that Fernando Alfarc cannot imagine for his hotel. He says he's getting bombarded with curious inventions. But what he really needs is reliable information from the government about what regulations he'll have to meet and when he can reopen his hotel.